All right. Welcome to the People First Leadership Weekly webinar. I see I've got one person on right now, and I'm going to just kind of talk for a second because I know there's some other people who are probably going to join up later. Also, if you don't want to be on YouTube, don't raise your hand and ask any questions. This is recorded, and I do put these on YouTube, but I would love if you would engage and have some things in the chat as well. So feel free. Let's see, open the chat up. There we go. All right, we are going to go ahead, jump in, and get started. And today we're talking about chaos and clarity, creating a culture of accountability without micromanaging. And for leaders, this can be a difficult subject because we like to have our hands in the pot. We like to make sure things are going the way that we want them to. And oftentimes that can look like and feel like micromanaging for our direct reports and the people who are underneath us. So I'm going to talk about three main points. First point is the difference between micromanagement and proactive leadership. Number two, how to build a feedback-rich environment. This is going to be key because this is, super important, and I've got some really good details on specifics for you on this. And then number three, structures that promote ownership and responsibility. So let's dive into number one, the difference between micromanagement and proactive leadership. Proactive leaders set a direction where micromanagers control details. Micromanagers, they love to have their hands in things. And what we need to do is, as leaders, get our hands out of that. Part of this goes back to hiring. If you hire the right people and you hire well, you don't need to micromanage those people. Do you need to train them up and check in with them? Absolutely. But if you hire well, and you can trust the people that you've hired, you don't need to micromanage them, because if you hire rock stars, you let the rock stars sing, right? So proactive leaders set the direction. This is the direction that we're going. This is the mission. This is the vision. This is the goal. You are a rock star. Go in this direction and do the work that we need to achieve the goals. Now, is it going to look a little bit different for everybody? Sure. But if we are good leaders, we are going to empower our people to take those steps without us. Now, are there parameters? Yes. And I like to use the analogy of going to the bowling alley. And if you're like me, your ball spends a lot of time in the gutter until they put up the bumpers, right? And what do the bumpers do for the gutter of the bowling alley? They keep your ball going in the right direction, but they don't let it get into too much trouble. And it may not get you a strike every time, but you're almost guaranteed to knock down some pins. As leaders, we need to be the bumpers in the bowling alley. We need to keep our people moving in the right direction, but give them latitude and leeway to navigate that alley on their own. Now, does everybody need some training from time to time? Yes. Does everybody need some redirection from time to time? Yes. Does everybody need some momentum push from time to time? Yes. But if we keep our parameters in place, then people know how to operate within those parameters. I was just talking to a leader the other day, and they were expressing a frustration to me. And the frustration was, every time I'm away from the building, things seem to go a little haywire, and people seem to not know how to act right and do what they're supposed to do when I'm not in the building. And that is, unfortunately, just kind of the human condition. When the cat is away, the mice will play, and that happens. Now, if you always have to have leadership in some way, shape, or form in place. Now, if you are the sole leader and you have to be away, then maybe you designate somebody. Okay, then I'm going to designate Jim to be in charge while I'm gone. Just so you know, and everybody else knows, that there is still a hierarchy and structure in place. Think about your kids. If you leave your kids completely alone at the wrong age, what's going to happen? Chaos, right? Absolutely. And you don't want that. But what do you do when mom and dad want to go out on a date and have dinner and go to a movie? Do they leave the kids home alone? No, because they know that would be disastrous. What do? They hire a babysitter. What does the babysitter do? The babysitter provides interim leadership while the real leaders are gone. And this is what we as leaders need to understand. Very seldomly have I ever seen a team that functions extremely well without some sort of leadership in place. Now, can they do it for a day? Sure. If they're working on a project and they're a high functioning team, hey, I've got to go over here to the next town over and go to a meeting. Sure, that can happen. Is it regularly happening? No, probably not. And even when that leader leaves that team, there's probably a team leader who's already in place who's keeping things running. So, along with that, if we as leaders, we have to balance this. And I used this analogy the other day with one of the teams that I'm coaching right now. Is, when you go to the circus and there's clowns who are doing the acrobatics and they're doing all this other stuff, and there's usually a clown who can balance a board on a ball. So there's a ball and then there's a square board that they're standing on top of the ball. That means that clown has to balance left to right and front to back at the same time. As leaders, unfortunately, that's what we have to be able to do. We need to empower our teams to work within our parameters, but we also need to be involved enough that they don't kind of just run amok. So there's this fine line of balance where, yes, we need to be the bumpers in the bowling alley, but we still need to be the momentum pushing the ball down the alley in order to hit the pins. So what does that look like? Well, sometimes if we micromanage, then our direct reports will feel that we don't trust them. And a lack of trust will fuel micromanagement habits. If we are micromanaging our people, then they are not going to perform to their utmost. They're not going to be doing their best because they're micromanaged. They're going to be like, well, geez, if Todd keeps coming in here telling me what to do all the time, I'm just going to do the basic bare minimum. And then what does that mean Todd has to keep doing? I have to keep managing. Why? Because my employee is not performing at a high level. So I have to keep coming in and keep doing this stuff. And so the lack of trust kind of goes both ways. Confusing, but it happens that way. Now, if I empower my employee, I'm like, hey, I'm going to let you run with this. I want you to bring it to me in 2 days when it's done, and let's go over how everything went. Okay, wow, now the employee feels the trust that I'm placing in them. So they're going to be like, you know what? I really need to do a good job because this is a really big opportunity for me. So here I go, and I'm going to do a fantastic job. So now I've trusted the employee. The trust is going to be returned to me because that employee is going to do the best job that they can. Now, are they going to do it perfect the way that I want them to? No, but that's where the feedback comes in. So let's look at that. Point number 2, how to build a feedback-rich environment. I have said this, and I will die on this hill. Leaders need to provide regularly scheduled feedback for their direct reports on an ongoing, regular basis. It needs to be part of the culture and climate of your organization, your business, your company, whatever it is. But everybody needs regular feedback, because when you give and receive regular feedback, you no longer feel like you're just operating on an island. You know that you have support. You know that there are other ideas out there, and it keeps you humble. And when you're humble, you're usually more open to other ideas. That is key right there. Being open to other ideas, being professionally agile, as I like to say, and being able to move at the pace of whatever it is that you need to be moving at the pace of. So whether that's being situationally aware, professionally agile, doing whatever it is that you need to do those things, but make sure that you are always humble and can receive and give feedback. I'm going through this now with a coaching team that I'm working with right now. And one of the things that I'm doing is I've given them an exercise. They've got this thing that they need to do. They need to solve a problem. They need to take that to their higher ups and get approval to solve that problem. But what I'm also doing is I'm coaching their higher ups. And so what they are doing is now I'm coaching them to let go and let these direct reports solve this problem. It is an exercise in the direct reports stepping into their leadership. It is also an exercise for the leadership to empower the direct reports and step back and let them operate. So I've got 2 things going on at the same time in the same exercise. So far, so good. And we're going to check in again next week and see how it's going. But creating regular feedback. This is part of what this exercise with this company that I'm doing is empowering them. Not empowering, I'm sorry, that's the wrong word. What I'm doing with the leadership is they are learning to give feedback. And then the direct reports are learning to receive that feedback, not as critical feedback, not as you've done something wrong, but as feedback, hey, let's try this, or this could be done better, or have you thought about this? I am literally just opening the pathways for them mentally to give and receive feedback, depending on which part of the feedback they're in. And that's key. This company has not been part of that feedback before. They've not been used to giving and receiving feedback, but now they're getting into that and they're working really well together. It's going really well because now they know, oh, I'm going to get feedback. It's just part of the culture. Perfect. Oh, I'm going to have to give feedback. Well, I know that so and so is not going to be mad because I've been giving them feedback every week for the past month. That's the point. Be open to the feedback because then it's easier to give and to receive that. One of the ways that I did this when I had a team of direct reports was I set up weekly meetings depending on their seniority in the company. The people who were in the company, I think 1 to 3 years, I met with weekly. If you were in the company 3 years or more, I met with you every other week. Same structure. I gave them the structure for the meeting. We're going to talk about something you're doing well. We're going to talk about something that you could improve on. We're going to ask about support that you might need to make improvements. And just then there's some open time where if there's something that you want to bring in to discuss, we can do that as well. These meetings were never more than 15 minutes, unless, we got talking about, the game last night or your vacation, and then it was okay. But we always understood the meeting was only 15 minutes long, and that was it. So it can be fast, short, to the point, efficient, and back to work you go. It doesn't need to be long and drawn out. And when I first started this structure, I was like, man, this is going to take a ton of time. But if I break it up over 5 days, I think I had a team of 13 people at the time. So that was like just a little less than 3 meetings a day at 15 minutes a pop. That's really only a half hour to 45 minutes out of my day for me to have direct contact, feedback with my direct reports. And man, did that keep us all going in the same direction because I set the vision, I set the mission, I set the direction that I wanted them to go, and then I'm checking in with them on a weekly basis. Plus, I'm seeing in the hallways, in and out of other places in the building. Like, it was just a really good, rich environment. We always just were together. So one of the points that I want you to think about is when you are giving constructive feedback. I don't like to say constructive criticism because I don't know. I just don't like the word criticism because it's not a criticism. It's a growth point. If I'm just being critical, I'm not offering you any chances to grow. But if I'm giving you constructive feedback, that is an opportunity to grow. So that's why I did make the differentiation between those words. If you are starting this with your business, your organization, your company, you need to model it. And this is what we did with our direct reports. We implemented this system and everybody was kind of like, oh, they're changing something. Oh, this doesn't feel good. Oh, we're going to have weekly meetings where you're going to give me feedback about my performance. There was already attitude in the room. You could feel it. So what we did as leadership is we modeled that. We did mock meetings. We had a whole staff meeting, and then we did mock meetings so that they could hear the script that everybody was going to be using. They could see what it looked like. They could hear what it sounded like. They could hear the tension, if there was going to be any tension, and feel that when giving or receiving feedback. And it was kind of like an inoculation. Like, oh, this isn't that bad. Actually, you're telling me I could do better in this one area. I didn't know that I was not doing great in that area. So this actually is making me better. And really, in a course of about a month, the whole mindset and attitude shifted towards the positive about having these weekly meetings. So as leaders in your businesses, in your corporations, whatever it is that you're doing, incorporate some sort of regular feedback. And maybe it's not weekly. Maybe you don't need weekly feedback. Maybe you could do once every other week. Maybe you could do monthly. That would be fine. It all depends on your situation. So I'm here to help you with that. If you want to figure that out, reach out to me. Let me know. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about what that looks like and what that may be implemented like. Now, maybe in an organization, you go to quarterly, like 4 times a year. Maybe this is something that isn't like a daily basis necessity where you have to talk about something on a weekly basis. Maybe a really good example of this is churches. I don't think you need weekly feedback for the pastor. I'm sure he gets it, but probably not necessary. But I think quarterly feedback would be fine in a situation like that. Some of these bigger organizations where you're kind of just keeping the wheels turning. And I think that would be fine. Some of the structures, number 3, structures that promote ownership and responsibility. I like having dashboards, and I don't like to say scorecards, but I think dashboards where you can just kind of see data. I'm big on data, data that is consistent and data that will help us move our organization or our business. I like to make data driven decisions like, hey, widget A is selling out every other week, but widget B is not selling at all. We sell one every couple months. Maybe we should put some more time and effort into making more widgets on the A line, and maybe we scale back making widgets on the B line because they're not doing so good. That's data driven decision making, and I love that. So have dashboards or scorecards or whatever it is, and I know there's a lot of this technology out there right now to track just your meetings, your commitments, and so that you know what, this really isn't overwhelming. I've got to do 13 meetings this week. Yeah, but if I break that down, it's like 2.5 a day. So it's really maybe I do 2 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, all the way through Thursday, and then Friday's a super light day. I can do 4 on Friday. If they're 15 minutes a piece, that's an hour. That's a total of an hour. And I'm meeting with 4 people. I'm giving, receiving feedback. They're hearing ways that they can improve and make the company better. Like, that's a really good, like, be organized in that. Be organized in your meetings and in the feedback that you give. I kept a sheet on every single person that I had a meeting with. I wrote my notes down, and then I filed that note, that piece of paper that I used, in a file folder with their name on it for the entire year. So that way, if I ever needed to go back and look, oh yeah, I talked to them about this in November, and look at the improvements they've made as early as December. Or conversely, I talked to them about this in November. They're still having this problem in February. Yeah, we definitely need to address this again, and maybe address it from a different angle. So just having that data. Now, this is back when I was doing this, when we didn't have all the technology and the scorecards and the dashboards at our fingertips. So I was doing a lot of paper pencil type stuff. And that's kind of how my brain works. If I type it out, I don't usually remember it. But if I write it out with my hand, I'm usually going to have a better retention rate with that. So find the system that works for you, but use the system and make sure that the system is working for you. And then lastly, let employees define their own solutions within their boundaries. So again, going back to the bowling alley analogy, you've got them going down the bowling alley. You are the bumpers. Let them come up with their own solution. So this is often what I would do. And I would say, hey, this is something that I'm seeing that you need some improvement in. What are some ways that you think you could improve in that? Because I know I have my own ideas, but I also know I'm not always the smartest man in the room. And other people have really good ideas that are probably going to be better than mine sometimes, or a lot of times. And sometimes the person, once you present them with this, they'll say, oh, well, actually, now that you mention it, how about I try this? And maybe it was something you never even thought of, but it's a fantastic idea. Maybe I scratch out my idea and write down their idea, because what are they more likely to implement? The idea you gave them, or the idea that they came up with themselves? Right. The idea that they came up with themselves. So maybe you think, oh, it's not going to be a great idea, but you know what? It moves them in the direction of fixing the problem. I've done that before. I know my idea is better, and I think my idea is the solution, but they came up with something that may be a little less effective than what my idea is. You know what? I'll let them try it for a week. Okay, yeah, go for it. We'll check in next week and see how it's going. And if it's not, I'm only hitting at 50% here. It's not going so good. All right, well, here's a solution that I thought of. Why don't you try that? Now, they're already in the habit of trying to fix that problem. So now when you give them one from your brain, and they've already done one from their brain, it's like, man, all right, I'm just going to continue this. So they're more likely to implement what you gave them. But if they have a halfway decent idea on their own, I'm always going to let them try that first. Now, if it is a time sensitive solution, I understand that sometimes teams have deadlines that they need to meet, reports that have to be in by a certain time, date, or whatever. Yes, sometimes you as a leader say, okay, here's the solution. This is the solution that I want you to implement because I've already thought about it. If you implement it in this way, it's going to check all the boxes. Can you please implement this and try this going forward? Okay, sure. Now, do they have their own idea? Okay, yes, that idea is good. Here's some of the issues I see with the idea, but we are under a time crunch right now. We need to have this project complete in the next week. And your solution is going to have to take some time to weed out some of the things that are going on in there. Let's say my solution doesn't need any of that because I've already thought about that. Let's implement my solution this week to get our deadline met. And then after that, let's go back and try your solution and see if it works. And if it does, we can go with it because I'm fine with that. Again, as the leader, you can't be so egotistical that only your ideas are going to work. Now, do sometimes you have to pull rank? Yes. And that's fair because, I mean, that's why we're the leaders. We have to make those hard decisions sometimes. But if that's what if you're under a time crunch or a deadline that you have to meet, then yeah, sometimes you have to pull rank and do those things. But don't do it in a way, again, leaders, get your ego out of the way. Don't do it because you're a bulldozer. Do it because that's the best thing for the mission, vision, and reaching the goal. And then circle back to that. Say, yes, I understand that's an idea that you want to implement. We're going to implement my idea this week because we have this time crunch and my idea is going to avoid all of those problems. Now, your idea, we still have to, weed that out a little bit and see if that goes and, maybe that'll work. Let's do this idea first. After that, then we're going to go back and we're going to try your idea. And then let them. Leaders, let them. I know that's hard to let go sometimes, but let them try it because they're more likely to put more effort into the idea that they came up with, and it might be effective. You just don't know. So give them that opportunity. So kind of circling back to the title of creating a culture of accountability without micromanaging, I hope you see where many of these strategies allow you to lead, but prevent you from micromanaging. And sometimes we as leaders need to put some systems and structures in place to prevent us from doing the things that we unfortunately just kind of fall into sometimes. And micromanaging can be one of them. Sometimes that is a personality related thing where you are just hyper focused on perfection and you are going to micromanage to make sure everything is perfect. And then there are other people who are like, you know what, let's try it. I'm okay with things being messy for a little bit. As long as the product is good when we're done, I'm okay with, playing in the sandbox a little bit and getting a little bit dirty and seeing how things work out. You need to assess yourself where you're at. And maybe this is where you get feedback from your direct reports or your higher ups. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. How do you think my personality is going to lend to solving this problem this way? And be honest with me. And then listen to the feedback, even if you don't like it. One of the best things that I've ever done in my life was take absolute ownership for my decisions and be open to feedback. Yep. And I was having a conversation with somebody just yesterday, and I said, you know what? That's a fair point. Even though I disagree, that's a fair point. And man, right there, that said two things very, very loudly. One is I disagree, but two, I'm civil-minded enough where I'm going to allow you to have an opinion and even concede that you're making a fair point. What did I just do there? I built a little bit of trust with that person. That person knows that we may not be on the same page, but I'm a safe person to have a disagreement with. And I'm also going to be at least collegial enough to work with you because I'm admitting that you made a fair point. So, leaders, sometimes we need to get out of our own way so that our leadership can shine and not our attitudes, right? Yeah, absolutely. So I hope this was helpful today. From chaos to clarity, creating a culture of accountability without micromanaging. And I hope these strategies will prove helpful to you in the future. Thank you for joining me today. As always, I appreciate everyone who's there and watching this on the replay. The replay will be out. I'm going to try to get it banged out early today because I've got some other commitments later this afternoon, so I'm going to try to do it right away. But thank you for watching. As always, reach out to me if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and keep your cheap shots. Until next week, everybody, thank you and have a fantastic day.